welcome back to the channel. My name is Chris and I am a gorilla in the wrist. Today we're going to do a little bit of a retrospective on the Pagani watches that I have in my collection. And thank you to the viewer who commented that maybe I was being a little bit harsh in my review of the Doxa Homage, the Sub 300T, the orange one. I think on reflection and thinking about what he said, I suspect maybe my expectations were a little bit unreasonable given this was a £90 watch. So I thought to make retribution for that, I would do a quick run through of my favourite 3 Pagani Design watches. Let's get into it. So very quickly going to run through the specifications, starting with the PD1667. The dial width on this is 39.5, the lug to lug is 46, the lug width is 20mm and it has a thickness of 11mm due to that quartz movement. The PD1667 has a dial width of 42mm, lug to lug of 48mm, lug width of 20mm and a thickness of 14mm. And then finally, the PD1719 Doxa Homage has a dial width of 43.5mm, lug to lug of 48, a lug width of 20mm and a nice chunky 14mm of thickness. So let's talk about the things I don't particularly like about this watch. So I think starting on the dial, I guess the non-colour matched date wheel is a bit disappointing. It does kind of stand out. It's a very bold white and doesn't really go with anything else. I think if the colour had matched the indices colour, that sort of Photina colour, it might not have been so bad, but it just doesn't look right to me. I'd also question whether there's a need for. I've been looking at the No Time to Die Omegas, and I can't find any of them that actually have a date window on it. And I actually think this is one of those rare things that actually the watch would look much, much better without it. So I think for me, the date window is a bit of a problem. I also think the bit that's missing in terms of the dial is that little pop of red, the sort of the ox blood red that there is on the Homage watch itself. I think even if they had put some of the writing that's below the pinion in that, I think it would have added an extra dimension to the watch. And I guess the final point for this one is actually the movement. We'll see it in the back. So for me, this 8215 Miyota, there's nothing wrong with it. Let's be absolutely honest. It's a perfectly good functional movement. But for me, I think it's just too bloody noisy. I also think it isn't, I don't think it has a bi-directional winding mechanism. I mean, I've never had any problems with it, but if I was picking a movement, I suspect I picked this because it was the cheapest one on the watch. But still on this sort of watch, I think I would probably recommend, if you can, go for an NH35 movement. I think it just works better in terms of this watch. But in terms of the positive things about this watch, I actually quite like it. So the first thing I really like is that it feels substantial. I mean, I have kind of added a bit by sticking it on this enormous engineer's bracelet just to add to it. It weighs in at about 190 grams on this bracelet, but it does genuinely feel substantial, which I think is great. I like the fact they've put a display case back on it. I entirely agree that it isn't the prettiest movement to look at, but again, I kind of applaud that as an effort. And I do really like the domed sapphire crystal. You do get a very nice distortion effect as you turn the wristwatch around. So no, I think that's excellent as well. So let's talk about the PD1644 Homage. Clearly, this is a Rolex Daytona Homage. In terms of the negatives, this is not going to take long. There are not many negatives for this watch from my perspective. The only thing I would really comment on is that the clasp, they've gone for the sort of Rolex glide lock looking clasp, but it doesn't have that sort of self-adjusting mechanism in there that I have seen on other budget watches. But apart from that, I can't really find much fault with this watch. Could do with maybe another coat of anti-reflective coating. But no, apart from that, very few things to say of a negative nature about this. In terms of the things I like about it, I think it's a decent size. It's not a huge watch, so it's under 40 millimeters. It's got the cracking VK67 Mecha Quartz movement from Seiko, so it's reliable. It's got screw down pushers on it. So these pushers for the timer buttons are screw down. Again, just enhances water resistancy. It's a decent working chronograph. So I have used it to time things. It has got a decent attempt at a Jubilee bracelet on it as well, leaving aside the clasp. But actually it's really nice. It's not particularly jangly, and really suits the watch. So yeah, really positive. And I guess the biggest positive is that you get all of this. I think I bought this one, it was about £55. I would challenge anybody to show a better quality watch at that price than this one. It is an absolute belter. So if you see one in the sales, absolutely get one. It's an absolutely cracking watch, and that is far too many absolutelys in one statement, but you'll get the general gist. This one is a winner, hands down. So finally, the PD1719 Doxa sub 300T Homage. I'm not going to spend a long time doing the pros and cons of this watch because I have done them fairly recently in another video. I think the biggest negative about this is the loom. However, I do take on board one of my viewers' comments that actually, what was you expecting? The loom isn't brilliant on this at all. However, I don't think that makes a massive difference. Certainly you probably wouldn't be using this as a hardcore dive watch anyway. So I was definitely way too harsh. So apologies to Pagani Design. I really like it. It's a bright and colourful watch. It's a bit of fun. 80 quid, maybe expecting a huge amount of loom was unreasonable. I think the only caveat to that I would say is that Steel Dive managed to get pretty good loom on a 70 quid watch. So maybe Pagani Design could have another go. Maybe version 6 or 7 or 8 could have a bit more on it. But it does have a lot to give it credit for. So it has got a decent buckle on the strap. It's very secure. Yeah, I think definitely too harsh. I think it's a decent watch. Certainly if you like the style, it's well worth having a go at this one. I doubt that it's got 300 meters of water resistance, but let's be honest, most normal human beings are never going down that deep anyway. So yes, apologies for the previous review. I think maybe I overdid it a bit. This is a decent watch, and is deserving of your time. So I'm going to have a go at summing up now. I think as a brand, I think Pagani Design has a lot to recommend it. I think they produce very good homages to many luxury watches, some better than others, but that's going to be true of most Chinese homage brands. They're a lot of fun, they're good value. I mean, none of these watches cost over £100. They all come with decent movements. I think what I've heard on other channels is probably true. when I think about these watches, is that they stretch the money so thin and across so many areas and have so many positives, that you have to allow for the fact that you can't get everything that you want at this price point. You simply can't. It's not reasonable to expect it. The fact that they tend to deliver most of what they're trying to do is admirable, and their output is indeed so prolific that there is always something coming along in a new style. And I guess the thing that I do find these useful for, some of these are watches that I am never going to have. I'm never going to have a Rolex Daytona. As much as I would love one, I'm never going to have one. I probably wouldn't buy the Doxa because I'm not impressed by the things I hear about their customer service. And the Omega I love, again, just probably wouldn't buy. So it gives you a taste on, and it allows you to get on your wrist something you may never have the real version of. But it's good enough. It's not a fake. I don't agree with fake watches. I think it's terrible. These are homages too. They aren't direct copies. Although the similarities are clear, you can see where the inspiration, nay, copying comes from. But I think as a brand, I think they're an entertaining brand to watch. And occasionally they get it absolutely spot on. This Daytona, the Daytona Homage is spectacular for the money. I compare it to other watches that cost 2-3 times as much, but don't deliver the same looks or functionality. It's just an absolute banger. So if I was picking one out of all of these three, I would absolutely pick the Daytona PD1667 as the one I would pick out of all of these at this price. As I said in the earlier bit, if you know a better proposition for £50, or should we say $60, let me know what you think it is in the comments. I can't think of one, and I'm regularly looking at watches at this price point. This one just does it all, and looks the absolute business. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, comment. If you didn't like it, please say so. This is a free world. Please let me know what you think. If there are watches that you would like to see, then again, drop a comment in and I will pick those up and have a go. Other than that, it just leaves it to me to wish you a fantastic weekend. Hopefully see you again soon. Thanks everybody. Bye bye.